In November of 1932, a decorated World War I artillery officer named Major G.P.W. Meredith loaded a Lewis gun onto a truck in Western Australia. His orders came directly from the Australian government. His enemy was a flock of emus. He fired over 2,500 rounds in the first week. He killed fewer than 50 birds. This is not a joke. This is not a metaphor. The Australian military deployed heavy machine guns against wildlife and lost so badly that Parliament had to officially record the humiliation. Here's what your history class never told you. The Great Emu War of 1932 was not just a funny footnote. It was a crisis born from the failures of post-World War I promises, from land betrayal, from economic collapse, and from a government so desperate to look like it was doing something that it declared war on a bird that cannot even fly. Let us go back to the beginning. After World War I ended, the Australian government made a promise to its soldiers. Survive the trenches, come home, and you will receive land. Free farmland in Western Australia. The Campion district. Beautiful, flat, fertile-looking country near the town of Merredin. Thousands of veterans took the deal. They cleared the land. They planted wheat. They built lives from almost nothing. Then the Great Depression hit in 1929. Wheat prices collapsed. And then, as if the universe wanted to make absolutely certain these men would not catch a break, 20,000 emus arrived. Not metaphorically. Literally 20,000 emus. Every single year, the emus migrated from the interior of Australia toward the coast. The Campion district was directly in their path. And these were not small birds. Adult emus stand nearly 6 feet tall. They weigh up to 130 pounds. They can run at 30 miles per hour. And they eat crops. All of them. Every last stalk. The veterans were desperate. They petitioned the government. They wrote letters. They organized. And the government's solution was to send Major Meredith, 2 soldiers, and 2 Lewis guns that had been used to kill human beings in World War I. The military arrived in early November of 1932. They set up near a dam where the emus gathered to drink. The plan was simple. Herd the birds into a tight group. Open fire. Kill thousands. Solve the problem. Here's what actually happened. The emus refused to cooperate. Not out of intelligence exactly, but out of biology. When the guns opened fire, the flock scattered instantly into dozens of smaller groups moving in every direction at once. You could not herd them. You could not corner them. Every time soldiers thought they had the birds surrounded, the emus split apart and disappeared into the scrub. The Lewis guns jammed repeatedly in the dust. Meredith himself reported that the emus could absorb bullets and keep running. He described them as, quote, like Zulus, who could face machine guns. The comparison he chose was warriors. He compared emus to warriors. After 6 days, the operation was suspended. The official military report documented that approximately 2,500 rounds had been fired for a confirmed kill count of 50 emus. 50. That is 50 rounds per confirmed kill, if the numbers were generous. If this surprised you, subscribe right now. We cover the history they actually hid from you. Every week, real stories with real names and real consequences. The operation was restarted later that month with adjusted tactics. Meredith mounted a gun on a truck and tried to chase the birds across open ground. The Western Australian terrain destroyed the truck. The emus outran it. By December, Parliament back in Canberra was dealing with open mockery. The member for Perth, James Mitchell, read the field reports aloud in the chamber. The opposition called it a national embarrassment. One ornithologist commented publicly that if Australia had an army of sufficient caliber, it would be the emu army. The military officially withdrew. The emus had won. But here is the second layer that almost nobody knows. The farmers kept asking for help. Year after year. And the government kept refusing military intervention. In 1948, 1949, 1951, 1952, the farmers submitted petitions again. They were denied every single time. The government was not going to repeat the humiliation. What they built instead was a fence. The State Barrier Fence of Western Australia. Hundreds of miles of wire mesh, originally designed to keep rabbits out, was extended and maintained partly to control emu migration. The farmers ultimately had to pay bounty hunters out of their own pockets. Between 1945 and 1960, over 280,000 emus were killed through private bounty programs. The machine guns failed. The bounty hunters succeeded, and the lesson the government learned was not about wildlife management. It was about optics. Never again put a uniformed soldier in a newspaper photo losing to a bird. The legacy of the Great Emu War lives in a very specific kind of institutional arrogance. The Australian government in 1932 looked at 20,000 animals, looked at World War I machine guns, and assumed that firepower would solve an ecological problem. They were wrong in the most public way possible. The emus were not an enemy. They were a migration. They were doing exactly what they had done for thousands of years before European settlement carved farms directly across their path. The veterans were not lazy. They were betrayed. By wheat prices, by drought, by impossible land, and finally by a government that responded to their suffering with a military operation so incompetent it became a punchline. 20,000 emus. 2,500 rounds. 50 kills. 0 lessons learned. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person this channel was built for. Subscribe. Ring the bell. The history they hid from you runs deeper than one bird war. We are just getting started.